life, he was like trying to do shots out of his
What was the question that they wanted to ask?
Yeah, because they were like running they were like 20, 30 minutes late or something. So they were like, so we were like, oh, let me listen, like, yeah. Oh, yeah, all 19 of them. And I like ran to the winner to catch his wife. I was like, oh, no, wrap it up.
You're resting.
Plan to finish the walls, install the cold guard, the border by conveyed and pulse committed to forming coalition to shut off the border. Now rephrase this into a question. No, already a question. That's not a question. It's just like the sentences. Okay. That's all in detail. Okay. We started.
I'll turn it on, please.
Yes, the power button.
He's right in the set. He'll help us out.
Thank everybody for joining with us here today. And in particular, I want to express my gratitude to the Director of the Texas Department of Public Safety, Director McCraw, General Norris, who is the Adjutant General for the Texas National Guard. We have with us Brendan Judd, the President of the National Border Patrol Council. And I also want to thank all of the Texas Department of Public Safety troopers, agents, Texas Rangers, and all the members of the National Guard who were involved in Operation Lone Star. And I want to thank all of the Border Patrol agents who serve on the front lines every single day dealing with the challenges that we see increasing along the border. And then finally, I want to thank local law enforcement. Local law enforcement has been working side by side with the Texas Department of Public Safety as they've been going about the process of responding to the challenges on the border. So the Biden administration's open border policies have created an open season for human traffickers, for drug smugglers, for cartels and gangs. These criminals are preying upon women and children, exposing them to abuse and to terror. Because the federal government is failing to act to respond to these dangers, Texas is stepping up to secure the border and to keep our communities safe. To achieve that goal, about a month ago, I launched what we have named Operation Lone Star. Operation Lone Star was launched for the purpose of filling the gaps that are left open as Border Patrol officers are busy, occupied with detaining the large number of people who are coming across the border. And when Border Patrol officers are occupied with those detentions, it leaves wide swaths of sectors open for the cartels and drug smugglers as well as in human smugglers to be able to get people and drugs and contraband across the border. Without Operation Lone Star, those cartels and criminals would have open season to get across the border, whatever they wanted to get across the border. Because of Operation Lone Star, the numbers are staggering what has been done just over the past almost month. Operation Lone Star effectively began on March the 4th, so less than a month ago. In 28 days, the Texas Department of Public Safety has made 598 criminal arrests. They've also made more than 16,000 referrals of illegal immigrants to Border Patrol. So the math on this is the Department of Public Safety made more than 21 arrests per day of criminal arrests, and they made more than 571 referrals of illegal immigrants per day to the Border Patrol. I want to give you just an idea of the type of arrests that the Texas Department of Public Safety has been involved in. In early March, one of the arrests involved a stash house in the Rio Grande Valley. While investigating the stash house, Department of Public Safety troopers and special agents discovered 4 illegal immigrants and a gang member. The gang member was wanted on 2 counts of rape of a child under the age of 13. On March the 8th, Department of Public Safety troopers made a traffic stop that resulted in the arrest of a man wanted for continuous sexual assault of a child. On March the 14th, troopers attempted to make a traffic stop that escalated into a pursuit. After the pursuit was done and after stopping the vehicle, they discovered that the male driver was smuggling illegal immigrants, including a 14-year-old child who had been sexually assaulted. The driver also had child pornography on his phone. On March the 16th, the Department of Public Safety assisted the Border Patrol with several waves of illegal immigrants being smuggled on rafts. This included 217 illegal immigrants apprehended, including, among that group, 152 children. One of those children was a 6-month-old girl who was thrown into the river by smugglers. As Brendan Judd explained to me, there is a reason why smugglers and cartel members do things like throw a young child into the river. They know that when doing so, it will cause Border Patrol and Texas Department of Public Safety officers to focus on that child and to save that child like what they did do. When law enforcement is focused on saving a child, that opens the door to the opportunity for the drug smugglers and the cartels to engage in other crimes, and that's part of what happened. But to show you how abusive these people are, there was a mother among the group who was stomped on by the cartels and broke her leg. And that woman was also helped by the Texas Department of Public Safety working alongside the Border Patrol. Do we have Trooper Woodard with us? Right here. Trooper Woodard, with the Texas Department of Public Safety, was the trooper who was involved in the rescuing of that child, as well as dealing with the mother who had a broken leg. Trooper, thank you for your service.
Yes, sir.
So this is just a small sample of the dangerous criminals that the Texas Department of Public Safety is apprehending and the horrific abuse these criminals inflict on their victims. A concern that we have is how brazen and open the drug cartels are getting in trying to recruit people here in the state of Texas to assist them in these crimes. I was provided these. I'm going to show you these two pictures if you can zoom in. These are two pictures from TikTok. And these are ads or videos and things that are being run by cartels on TikTok trying to recruit people in Texas to assist them commit their crime with the promise of money, as well as other things. And it's rare, I am told, to see the cartels open or operate that openly so that it could be seen by law enforcement. But you can be assured now law enforcement will be following up, tracking down who these criminals are and doing whatever needs to be done to make sure that these types of operations will be shut down. Bottom line is this. Operation Lone Star is doing everything they can to keep our community safe. But this problem is not going to be fixed until the Biden administration does its job to secure our border and to get this crisis under control. Next, we will have Director McCraw.
Thank you, Governor. Appreciate it. Public safety is the protection of people from harm. When we talk about public safety in the department, and certainly the state of Texas and the governor and the state legislature, that means all people in Texas. An unsecured border with Mexico has resulted in corridors of crime is the bottom line. I mean, Mexican cartels is enemy number one. And throughout Texas and nation, these corridors, they bring cocaine, methamphetamine, marijuana, fentanyl, any particular drug that's marketable, the cartels have it. But importantly, people. When we say people, as the governor indicated, it's a commodity to them. They don't care. They'll throw a 6-month-old baby into the water. They just don't care. I mean, they will stash, they will starve, they'll beat, they'll rape, and they'll abandon these children. And so it's very important, and one of the things that the governor's number one priority is that when we fill these gaps, because make no mistake about it, when you put those many unaccompanied children and family units into one area, the Rio Grande Valley area, Border Patrol becomes overwhelmed. We saw it in 2014, we saw it in 2019, and we certainly see it right now. When that happens, it provides a great opportunity for cartels to move migrant children that are high valued, that are moving towards the sex trafficking industry, as well as criminal aliens between the ports of entry. They're not trying to be interdicted, and they're trying to avoid apprehension, and they're available at that point. So it's important to be able to fill that particular gap, which we're doing right now. And we're certainly proud to work with our brave Border Patrol partners, as well as local law enforcement. And we're seeing a lot of things we hadn't seen in the past in terms of the brazenness of some of these smugglers and coyotes that are sitting on ranch lands and refusing to leave and moving into areas, as well as carrying weapons on this side of the border, which is an unusual occurrence. And certainly we're concerned about that. Social media. Who would have thought they're advertising for more coyotes? They need more smugglers to come from San Antonio and Houston. We didn't see that before. But again, this is a $1 billion a year industry by organizations that we've never seen before, the Mexican cartels. There's nobody more violent, more brazen, more depraved, and I'd say more cowardly in terms of what they do with women and children than the Mexican cartels. And they're enemy number one. They represent a domestic security threat to Mexico and certainly a public safety threat for all of Texans, and I would argue the nation as well. So thank you, Governor. We have an opportunity to be able to serve, and we're here to serve. And we're proud to protect and serve the state of Texas and work with our Border Patrol partners and certainly local law enforcement. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Among the other numbers that the Texas Department of Public Safety has achieved just over the less than 1 month, they, through this operation, have seized more than 14 pounds of cocaine, more than 23 firearms. They've arrested 9 people who have been identified as members of gangs, seized almost $1 million in currency. And so this is just the beginning of what is going to be an onslaught unless and until the Biden administration steps up and does something about it. Next is the Adjutant General for the Texas National Guard, General Tracy Norris.
Thank you, sir. Sir, from the date you activated us on March 4th, within 5 days, we were activating the state active duty under the governor. Within 5 days, we had a number of observation posts and listening posts on the border in support of our Texas Department of Public Safety. Our role is to add eyes and ears to DPS as well as Customs and Border Protection in order to detect, identify, and recognize any activity, illegal activity that is going on, and call that in to DPS and the Border Patrol and make it quicker for them to be able to react to where that event is. Our soldiers are using multi-sensor systems that are able to detect, recognize, and identify that activity. And sir, again, our soldiers have been not unfamiliar with the border. They've been down here several times in support of DPS, and I just want to thank the employers of all our guardsmen and also the families that support our guardsmen. I want to thank them for all of that they've done the last couple of years. Great
point. Thanks indeed, but also thanks to the members of the Texas Military Branch for being down here. We appreciate them.
Yes, sir.
Next we have Brandon Judd, the President of the National Border Patrol Council.
Governor, thank you. I appreciate you inviting me to be here. My name is Brandon Judd. I'm the President of the National Border Patrol Council. I operate largely in a political aspect, but I also put on a uniform, and I go out and I patrol the border to try to secure the safety and security of the American public. I will tell you that policies matter. Without policies, we will have the problems that we're seeing today. I want to thank the governor, first and foremost, for allowing Texas DPS, and I would call on the governors of our other border states, New Mexico, Arizona, and California, to also step up to the plate and assist in this issue. Problem is we wouldn't need governors like Governor Abbott if the federal government would do their job. Because policies matter, and if we continue down the road that we're going to continue to see these numbers increase, and the safety and security of the state of Texas will be threatened, and the safety and security of the entire country will also be threatened. If we continue to allow people to cross our borders illegally, to be released into the United States pending a hearing sometime down the road, we're going to continue to see this problem rise. We must look for the solutions. And if the Biden administration wants to say that the Remain in Mexico program was inhumane, then he needs to look for a solution. You cannot get rid of a program that worked and was very effective and not replace it with something else. And that is, in fact, what the Biden administration did. There are solutions that can be had. If we were to set up courts to adjudicate these cases, then we would give relief to those individuals that deserve relief under U.S. law. We would also send back those individuals that are coming here to game the system, that never have an intent to leave this country, regardless of whether they receive an order of deportation. We can solve this issue and we can solve this problem. And by solving the problem, we can release Texas DPS to do the job that they were supposed to be set up for. But if we don't, then we're going to have to call on governors like Governor Abbott. And thank goodness Texas does have a governor that's willing to step up to the plate when the federal government fails. So again, Governor Abbott, I appreciate the time. I appreciate what you're doing and the resources you're devoting to an issue that you should not have have to solve.
Thank
Federal
you,
government should
and
solve.
thanks to the men and women of the Border Patrol.
Thank you.
We'll take a few questions. Yes. You speak up a little bit.
If it's all right, can we ask
Sure.
the director, sorry, some of those, so I have two questions.
Sure.
One is, we had heard that the Stern County surge of troopers there was last about 6 days. I was wondering how long it's going to last in total. And my second question is, of the arrests that were made, can you tell me if any of those included evictions, special interest arrests, and also things like federal misdemeanors like illegal crossing the border?
We don't arrest anybody for crossing the border illegally. We arrest smugglers, and there have been smugglers that we have arrested. As the governor talked about, over 16,000 IAs or illegal aliens we came in contact with them. Those were referred to the Border Patrol. We did not maintain them. There's no state immigration violation. Smugglers, yes, we charged with them. Drugs, as the governor talked about, marijuana and cocaine, we made arrests on those particular things. And stash houses where we have a smuggler. And of course, he documented 3 incidents in terms of we had sexual assaults on children, underage children that were coming here illegally and no doubt was exploited and will be continue to be exploited. Those are the majority of the type of criminal violations that we came in contact with that period of time. As for the duration, it depends on what happens on the ground. As they come and Border Patrol is swamped, I mean, the governor's made it very clear that the Department of Public Safety and National Guard is going to be there to support them, and we'll be continuing operations in that regard. The one thing that shifted from the last time that the governor had a press conference is Del Rio sector. It became the number 2 sector in Texas, and that's never happened before. We've had those types of numbers. So we got the call from not just the sector chief, but from the sheriffs. I know Representative Morales was very concerned about that area. So the governor had us increase our tempo and resources within the Del Rio sector as well. I can say that when we do that, we move to 12-hour shifts. We make sure we cover 24/7. We bring resources outside. So hope that answers both your questions.
Well, let me add some additional information because you did bring up one other topic I want to make sure you understood the answer to. You mentioned special interest arrest. I don't know if you were intending by that, but that is a term that's used that deals with people who come from countries with ties to terrorism. Is that what you were referring to? Sure. So we had discussions about that in our meeting before we came down here, where the discussion was that, yes, in fact, there have been people who are called special interest arrests, people who are coming from countries with ties to terrorism, and that's one of the extreme dangers that we face. And the people who are special interest coming from terrorist countries, they're not the kind of people who are going to walk up and turn themselves over to the Border Patrol or to DPS. They're the type of people that the cartels get a whole lot of money for to try to sneak through the gaps while the Border Patrol is occupied dealing with the children that they are dealing with. And that's exactly why the Biden administration needs to step up and explain to his fellow Americans that there are terrorists trying to get into the United States across the Texas border, and the federal government has to step up and do something about it.
Is there a number of how many special interest
There is, but we're not sure. We don't discuss them.
So Minority Leader McCarthy, he highlighted this issue just a couple weeks ago when he was down on the border, and he learned that there were several individuals from special interest countries that had been arrested. I personally have arrested people from all over the globe, whether it be Poland, Russia, Bangladesh, Brazil. We deal with people that come from all over the world. The politicians want to make this an issue of of Honduras, El Salvador, Guatemala, and Mexico, and it's just not. We get them from all over the world, and that's why it's so important that we have Texas DPS, because as the cartels continue to flood us with unaccompanied children, as they continue to flood us with family units, it takes our resources out of the field. And if it's not for the Texas DPS to plug those holes up, that the cartels are creating artificial gaps in our coverage. And if it's not for Texas DPS to plug those holes, we would have a lot more coming across into the United States.
Go ahead.
Elaborate
No, I'm fine.
on that baby that you mentioned, who rescued him and what happened to him afterwards.
Yeah, why don't we,
Super, why don't you
Wait.
take the mask off? Like, and here's a microphone. I think
he was the one involved in it.
A younger, much better looking version.
So just tell him everything about what happened.
Okay. I had established a lay-in position and seen the smugglers bringing approximately 6 people across on a raft. I gotten a little bit more brush on me, and the raft had gotten into a tree, just on the other side of a tree that had cane in it. I heard splashing and ayuda from a distressed woman. Once I have night vision on at this point, I climb into a tree and see that this woman is hanging onto a tree branch with the baby in her arm. The baby's in her arm and the water's going over the baby. So I got above her, kind of fell in, grabbed the baby, held the baby like a football, and helped the woman onto a tree branch. Positioned myself back on the tree and then walked out. I got up to the bank, and on the picture that you've seen, I start rubbing the chest of the baby because the baby wasn't moving at that point. Finally, seen that the baby started moving, started crying, and handed off the baby to a ranger, and then helped the other 5 back onto the bank.
And Border Patrol knows about what happened to that baby?
That baby was turned over to Border Patrol Resources, but that was a family unit. That was a woman and child. Most likely, because of the age of the child, most likely that those 2 individuals were released into the United States.
Go ahead.
Governor, Adolfo Muñiz with Specter News 1. What comment do you have about the fact that the Biden administration says that they are returning 80, 70-something% of the migrants back to Mexico? And this question also goes to the Border Patrol Council. Is that alleviating anything? How is that affecting? Is it true? What's not true about it?
All I can tell you is that we see increasing numbers of people coming across the border. I can tell you the words that were used by the Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas himself, and that is, this is an unprecedented number of people coming across the border, the most in more than 20 years, and we're just getting going in the process. These numbers will continue to increase because the Biden administration has established open border policies, making it clear that they are going to allow people to come in, and making it clear that we have thousands of people in locations across just the state of Texas, whether it be in Carrizo Springs or in Midland or in Dallas or now on military bases. And so as the numbers continue to increase, it is clear there's no slowing down in the number of people coming across the border.
So to answer that question, you have to take a snapshot in time. And if you go back to Inauguration Day, yes, it was probably close to 80% of the people were, in fact, being expelled under Title 42. But then you had an explosion in the numbers, numbers that were absolutely unprecedented. We've never seen these types of numbers of unaccompanied children before. And then you had the carve-outs for Title 42. And, of course, you started to see even more people. Axios, which generally tends to be on the liberal leaning, Axios fact-checked President Biden and said in the week that he gave his press conference, it was only about 13% that were being expelled. So again, you have to take a snapshot in time. You have to look at what are the current conditions and what are the drivers, these pull factors. And no, we're not expelling 80% of the individuals that are crossing the border today. If we're lucky if we're expelling, or if 40% of those people that are crossing today are actually being removed. We're lucky.
Thank you.
Governor, one question. We have had reports of people, stating that it looks like that these traffickers are taunting, in a sense, our Border Patrol agents and also these. Has there been any plans or any communications with the Mexican government to kind of do something about it?
So there's been no communication with the Texas government and the Mexican government. There are communications, obviously, between the federal government and the Mexican government. I don't have that information provided to me, but I do know that the federal government and the Mexican government communicate all the time about this. Yes.
Dr. Burns with NBC News. Two questions for you. One, we know actually from the numbers that the majority of families with young kids are being released, or largely being released in towns like McAllen, like Brownsville. Those are the cities on the front lines of this. And as we've been talking to them, they've been doing a lot, like trying to make sure migrants are tested, quarantined if they have COVID, so that they don't travel to other parts of Texas and the rest of the country. They are ensuring those folks are cared for when they're here. They say while DPS is helpful, they could also use resources like social workers to help deal with these families that are coming here traumatized, and resources like those hotel rooms. Are you planning to provide any additional resources of that nature to some of these towns who are where these migrants are primarily being released? And my second question is, we've heard from some reports of some migrant families about the situation at the Ansel Duas Bridge. There are some folks that have been spending 2 to 3 days there in that processing or intake area. Wanted to get comment on that and any information or insight you or any of your folks here.
I'll let somebody else take the second question while I answer the first question, and that is, there are well-defined organizations that are in charge of responding to each type of situation every step along the way as people come across the border illegally. The organizations in charge of providing the level of assistance that you're talking about at the local level, those organizations, those are NGOs associated with ORR, if you want a whole bunch of 3-letter alphabet soup names, but you know what they are. It's the ORR, the federal government, the Office of Refugee and Resettlement, that they are in charge of paying for and organizing all of the non-governmental-based organizations to provide the assistance that is needed at the local level. They're the ones with the federal funding to provide that assistance, and they have the job to do it. One thing that we have seen is the Biden administration was completely unprepared for the large number of people coming across the border because they were completely unorganized with their own federal agencies. The Biden administration was unorganized with the Federal Health and Human Services, with ORR, with the NGOs that collaborate with ORR. And they are just scrambling, even having to rely upon military bases to put these children on because they were so inept in getting this organized to begin with. But that is the federal government's job, and that's one of the many things that we're saying they need to step up and start doing their job. Someone wants to answer the second part. Yeah.
So, look, I appreciate that question. We have to have an open and honest conversation if we're going to solve the problem. If we do not have that, if all we're doing is taking short little quotes and running with those, we're never going to solve this problem. I don't care whether you agree with me after we have all the facts out. The truth of the Ansel Duas, what we call TOPS, it's a temporary processing center. Individuals are not supposed to be held there for more than 8 hours. If they're held there for any more than 8 hours, they then get transferred to one of the other facilities, most likely Donna, because that Ansel Duas is only supposed to be for family units or unaccompanied children. They'll then get transferred to one of the facilities, most likely Donna. We don't hold people at TOPS for more than 8 hours, so that's just not true.
Do you know how many people were there, Brandon?
Oh, we experience a large number of people at Ansel Duas all the time. It just depends on how many people cross. I mean, there's literally on the trails, there's literally signs that point them to go to the actual processing center. So people that come across the border, they know exactly where to go because the signs point them there. But talking about taunting, Paul Perez and I, we both had the 18 senators out on the border, and we took them to known smuggling routes. And this was about 1 o'clock in the morning. And when we got to one of the known smuggling routes, there were actually smugglers across the river that had higher powered spotlights. then the flashlights that we gave the senators for that tour, they were in fact taunting the senators. They were telling the senators things that I can't repeat for the camera, but they were telling them where they could stick it. They were telling them that they were going to bring people no matter what we did. They were going to continue to bring people, and we've continued to see that.
Two more questions. Sorry, two more.
For McCraw, do you have an update on what you mentioned in Dallas and interviewing the children and investigating drug cartels? How do we interpret that? What's the latest update on that?
Well, man, I can't give you any numbers right now, but yeah, clearly we're doing that with everyone we come in contact with. So we'll have some numbers later on, but they're really reflected in our investigations.
How do Texas Rangers, I guess, go into investigating whoever has assaulted or abused a child?
Well, I'll use an example as one of these stash houses we talked about when we identified an individual that was holding 4 illegal aliens in that stash house and had been charged with, and there's outstanding warrants for him for the sexual assault of two girls under the age of 13. Well, at that point in time, an interview was followed up. Is there any evidence? Okay, we used an example. The governor gave an example in terms of the cell phone with pornography on another smuggler that had a young 14-year-old that he had sexually assaulted. So it's all the normal things we do in the interdiction and protection of children that troopers are trained to identify on the highways that are criminal conduct associated with pedophiles and sex traffickers. And the troopers do the same thing. They just translate it down here. And one of the second parts of that is Rangers following up on that, or a DPS special agent following up on. And I want to say one thing on the taunting. There's no law against taunting, by the way. Okay, so we don't get our feelings hurt if the cartel members taunt us. We get taunted on this side of the border. Okay, so that's not a big deal.
Operations group that saved the 6-month-old baby in the river. It is in fact a special ops group.
Yep.
Are they assigned a mission right now in the Texas-Mexico border to address the migrant crossing?
Yes. In fact, we bring the special operators in, whether they're a SWAT team or whether they're Ranger Recon, but they're part of our special operations group. This trooper came from Bowie, Texas, out of Wichita Falls. He's on our special response team out there. And we identify through intel locations where the cartels are exploiting those gaps. And we do locate them. I think he testified or talked about, have NVGs at night. And we have him in low light. He was in a low profile situation, try to identify cartel members coming across and interdict them as they come across. So the answer is yes, and we'll continue to do that.
Great, thank you guys so much for coming. Thank you.
As long as
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD. Go to